Welcome back to the Mom and Mind podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kat. On this episode, I am joined by Emma Hopkins. She is a mom and business owner, and at the age of 39, she had her daughter and then experienced postpartum depression. And in our chat today, she's going to walk us through what that was like, how after having a business that she built from the ground up, that was her heart and soul, that the depression became so severe that she had to give up her business. And then what it was like to feel lost in that transition and find her way through healing and back to being able to restart her business, connect back to those parts of herself before becoming a mom, and then also incorporate that into her new role as mother. And she built her new business from her personal experience and education to coach women who also feel a loss of identity in order to realize their true potential and rediscover themselves. She also shares about the great work that she is doing with the Maternal Mental Health Alliance in the UK. So let's meet Emma. Welcome, Emma. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Dr. Kat. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, I always love hearing people's experiences point blank, but also because there are some cultural nuances that sometimes come in to, I'm here in the US, so I also do like to hear about people's stories in other parts of the world, because I think it's important for us to know how it's similar across the board. It doesn't, in some ways, it doesn't matter where you live. It's rough, but the amount of support you have can make a difference. So yeah, just wherever you feel comfortable, starting with your story, I welcome you to share.
Okay, thank you. So I had a little girl at my first child, my only child, at 39. I had quite a successful business. I had a gym. I had two gyms, one in Spain and one here in Wales in the UK. So I was on the radio every week talking about health and fitness. I was, a big, huge part of the community, felt quite successful, quite a confident person. Had my little girl, which was the most incredible thing. I'd finally met the man of my dreams and everything was what I thought was perfect, And she didn't sleep for 9 months. She had milk intolerance and reflux, and it nigh on killed me, if I'm honest. So she didn't sleep for 9 months, neither did I. So it was the toughest thing I've ever experienced in my life. And I think they use lack of sleep as a torture because it is a torture, and having a health and fitness background, I know how vitally important sleep is, and I wasn't really getting any. I would say I probably coped for about 10 months, or I thought I coped. And at about month 10, I literally hit rock bottom. So during that time, I also planned and executed our wedding in Spain. And then I turned 40 in the October. And I think after that, it was like I had tried to be superwoman in amongst all of this and hit complete burnout. So I had postpartum depression, which at the time I was probably very reluctant to admit and very reluctant to speak about.
Right.
I can remember walking into my business, my mum was my partner, something that I had created, the blood, sweat and tears that had gone into that was incredible. We'd had it for 12 years. And it was my life, and I felt I couldn't cope with that anymore, And that was a huge decision. It probably was quite a rash decision, a very quick decision, but I felt that I was struggling with being a mum and being a business owner. I had severe brain fog. I couldn't do the day-to-day running of the business, and I felt that something had to give. So I walked in and said to my mum, either you just take somebody else on and I step back for a little bit, or I want to sell, And she said, I agree. I think we should sell. We've had really good success here, but the business, you're the face of the business, and I can see the difference since you haven't been able to be here as much. So yeah, made a very quick decision to sell what was our life, to be honest, and very soon realized that loss of identity actually added to how I felt.
Sure it did, right?
Yeah, what I thought was doing the best thing for me actually turned out to actually work against me and fuel what was already quite a big fire, I suppose.
Wow. Right. And that's one of those decisions that you have to make the decision based on what you know and how you feel, and you won't really know the ramifications until it's done.
That's right.
Oh my gosh. Right. But okay. So this is are you still within like the year postpartum at
Yeah,
this point?
yeah.
Okay.
Still within the year. As I said, so I tried to go back to work. So being sort of within the health and fitness industry, as you can imagine, I had a bit of online business as well.
Mm,
So
mm,
I was back in my size 8 jeans within 3 weeks. I was doing videos and posts, and
mm.
I was probably very influenced by everybody else around me who seemed to be fitting back perfectly into their business after having a child,
Oh wow.
which is all smoke and mirrors, isn't it? You know,
It sure is.
you know, it is, but you don't feel that way, do you? You're watching everybody else's show reel and you're dying inside and you're feeling
Yes,
the imposter syndrome is huge, you know?
it really
It's
is.
yeah, it's unbearable. And you think, well, if they can do that, they can get straight back into work. They're looking amazing. They're blowing everybody away. Their business is excelling. And I am literally struggling to get up every morning, you know, and that nigh on broke me. So it was a really hard decision. I didn't think it through properly, but it was the only thing that I felt at that time that I could do. And I wanted to be a mum. You know, I'm very lucky. I know a lot. There are mums with postpartum depression that actually don't bond with their children, and obviously it's very different for everybody. The more
Mm,
research I've done on it, and the other mums that I've spoken to. So I'm so lucky that I did have that. My child is the most amazing thing in the world. I had that bond from day one, and
mm,
I made that decision to be a mum. I made that decision to have time for us and to look after both of our well-being by stepping away and just doing that one role
mm,
and
mhm.
and allowing myself to recover from what I had gone through, I suppose.
Um, right. So are you almost kind of stuck between two worlds, this what
Yeah,
you knew before and what it is
100%.
now, and oof, having so much change at once is a lot, including the kind of what do you say, like the loss of your identity,
Yes.
and trying to figure out what the new one is.
Mm-hmm.
It's an incredible amount. So what was the decision here was, it happened relatively quickly, but there must have been so much going on for you that made it
Yeah.
unbearable, can I say, to continue doing what you had been doing.
It was unbearable. And I think, I mean, we were quite lucky in a way that a member of staff of ours, like, literally snapped the gym up. It had saved her life. I had a female only gym. It was really special. We
Nice.
changed so many people's lives, you know. It was very unique, very different to a normal gym. And it saved her life in a way as well. And she said, I don't want anything to change. I want to be a part of this moving forward. So I suppose we were quite lucky in the fact that we sold it very quickly. But you know, even all of that time, I look back now, and because of the work I do, I mean, I was a life coach, a mindset coach, an NLP practitioner. I couldn't help myself. You know, I
Hmm.
knew all of these tools, and I could quite easily have stepped back into my coaching role and helped somebody else, but I could not help myself.
Hmm.
So I went back to my coach and I did a lot of personal development over that time, which was a struggle because you're a different person. Your mind is working
Yes,
very differently to what it has before. So what's worked for you previously is actually not working for you now. And I
totally.
found that quite hard as well, you know?
Right, especially if you have a background in knowing how to process things and help
Mhm.
yourself through things, and it's just not clicking over
Yeah.
all the things you used to use. I mean, there's just so many ways you can start to feel like you don't know what you're doing, or that you're messing things up, or that you're a failure, or blah, blah, blah. Like whatever iteration of that. It's just ripe.
I don't know if this resonates with you at all. It's quite a weird thing to say. However, I think because I had all of this knowledge, I felt because I knew it, I was doing it, but I
Hmm.
actually wasn't doing it. You know, it's like,
Hmm.
okay, well, I know that.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
know how to eat healthy. I know how to exercise, but I wasn't doing any of it. I wasn't eating healthy because I was stressed out all of the time. My cortisol, my stress hormones were through the roof.
Yeah.
I wasn't sleeping. I was 10 pound underweight. I was totally stressed out, you know, not sleeping, not eating properly, and pretending the worst thing, pretending that everything's okay. Because for me, and I'm sure most mums listening to this, and every mum that speaks to you will say that that guilt and the shame of admitting how terrible you feel when you're looking at this little precious thing that's probably the best thing that's ever happened to you in your life, yet you feel so sad inside. It's the happiest and saddest time, and trying to navigate that in your head is really, really difficult.
Absolutely. It feels like these are two totally different things. How can they be existing at the same time? But they do.
Mm-hmm.
Makes you feel a little, off, if to
Yeah.
say the very least.
And I felt, and I think most people do, I felt that as a woman, being a mum is probably the most natural thing, that I should have known how to do that and I should have
Mm,
felt good about it. But I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And I felt that I was digging myself into a deeper hole by not feeling good as well, you know. Surely I should have a smile on my face and I should be so happy about this. And and it didn't feel like that, and
no.
I couldn't quite understand why it didn't feel like that for me when it seemed to feel like that for everybody else.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that idea that you should know, you get this instant download of everything that you should be able to
Mm.
know how to do, and I mean, I think it's one of the most persistent and pervasive myths that we've come across as women, as mothers, that you're just supposed to know.
Yeah.
And I think for some people that happens, but it's also not this magical thing where you know every single thing you're supposed to know.
Yeah.
It's impossible. It doesn't happen in any way for anything else. But because there's all of this kind of magic and mythology surrounding becoming a mother, it's internalized at that
Yes.
point that you just believe that that's how you're supposed to be. And when it's not, and when you're not, well, then who do you have to blame but yourself?
Absolutely. And I think we're conditioned to believe that, aren't we?
Yes, yes,
We're
yes.
conditioned, it's like the thing of, I didn't have a child until 39. I was career driven. I lived abroad, I was career driven. And you have people going, haven't you got any children? And I'm like, well, no, not yet. I'm happy where I am, and maybe I will never have any. So again, that's another conditioning, isn't it? And we get we get pushed down this route of, okay, well, that's what society expects of me.
Sure.
And it doesn't always turn out that way. I mean, I think one of the biggest mistakes that I made was one, pushing myself straight back into work. It
Mm,
was my own business. It was really difficult.
yep.
You can't just have 9 months off when you run your own business, unless that business turns over a few £1 million a year, the chances of you being able to have 9 months off are very slim. So I think that was a biggie. Plus, I'd go to some of the baby classes, but because I was then going to work, and I'd take her with me because it was my own gym and everybody loved her and it was great. She was the little baby of the gym, but I wouldn't stay in the mum and baby classes and get to know anybody or speak to anybody because I'd be shooting off to work. So I know that again was a big mistake on my part, because I think if I'd given myself that time, okay, the lack of sleep would have still happened.
Hmm.
Maybe the feeling of the lost identity, maybe, the postpartum depression would have still happened, but I would have had people to talk to about it.
Mm.
I would have understood that other women felt the same, whereas I felt so alone and I didn't know where to turn to. I was wearing a mask all of the time. Our health visitor would come around. My house would be perfect. I would be perfect. She would be perfect. And I would never admit that I was actually feeling awful inside,
Mm.
So because you feel like a failure, don't you? You feel
Yes,
like, that's something that you can't admit to.
for sure. Can you describe, we don't have the health visitor system here. Can you describe just a little bit about like what that is and when they come by and what for?
So the health visitors come by once you've had the baby. Obviously, they come to check that everything's okay, and it's support for you and the baby, just to check, do you need help with breastfeeding? Do you need any additional support, etc.? How is the baby doing to weigh the baby, etc.? And that happens, I think it's every 3 months, if I can remember rightly. She's 6 now, sorry, so I can't remember, but I think it's every 3 months. And you just pretend that everything's okay because you feel like this is, like a head teacher coming to check on you, are you doing it right?
Oh gosh.
So
Right. That's a lot of pressure too.
yes,
Oh
it
my
is.
gosh.
It is.
Okay. So thank you for explaining that. It would be nice to have that here, but we don't. But if you don't feel like you can be honest,
Is it worth it?
it's hard. Yeah, right. It's not support that feels supportive
No.
necessarily.
It feels judgmental. It feels as if you're being tested. It feels as if, and when you look at, I don't know how it works with you, but obviously we have these like prenatal classes, prenatal, advice. You turn up, the mum and dad turns up, you watch videos, and then you can ask the midwives questions, etc., which is great. And it prepares you, but it's all fluffy clouds and unicorns. Everything's going to be perfect. The baby's going to come and
Mm.
all of it's beautiful music and the mum and the baby in it. And that's great. But that's not always how it turns out for everybody. And as much as obviously we don't want to show any negative videos or have any sort of negative information there, but maybe preparing parents for the fact that, okay, it's also going to be a little bit tough. You may
Sure.
not sleep properly. You may not eat properly. You need a support network around you. We were never told that.
Hmm.
I suppose in the back of our minds we knew that, but I think that maybe there needs to be a little bit more advice around that information for us.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, all right, I want to go back a little bit to you said before that you'd been living your life, you've had this career, if you weren't sure yet if you were going to have a baby or like whatever that was. So you said you were 39, I
Yeah.
think 39, yeah, when you had your daughter. So were people, were you also getting pressure from people about like, oh, the clock is ticking, or that kind of stuff that people say that just really doesn't help?
Sometimes, I suppose because of what I did, and I always seemed so much younger than what I was. I suppose that few years before it, I wasn't, but in my long-term relationship before that, then yes,
Mm-hmm.
grandparents would say, oh, have you thought, and other people
Hmm.
would. But I think when I was single before my husband came along, no, not really, because people could probably see how ambitious I was, and I probably made it quite clear that I was quite happy like that. And I hadn't
Hmm.
met the right guy, and I'm I'm very proud of the fact that I know what I want and I've always known what I've wanted in life.
Yeah.
It was never right for me. So it was never an avenue that I pursued or never anything that I was ever even interested in. My friends had children and I never really paid interest in that. So when I had my own, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. But then obviously my husband came along and he's the most amazing person. We're best friends. We've got so much in common. And he didn't have children either. And it changes then, doesn't it? You're a little bit older, you do
Mhm.
think, well, maybe. And, she's the most amazing thing in the world. But that doesn't take away the fact that it was also one of the toughest things I've ever done in my life.
Right, sure. And you were very solidly in your career and career path. Um, and you said traveling as well.
Yes, so I had a gym here in Wales and I also had a gym in Spain.
Hmm.
So I lived out there for 2 years. When I came back, I actually worked as a family liaison officer as a contractor with them. And I travelled with kids' cancer charities, so helping support the parents, coaching them,
Hmm.
etc. So very ambitious, anything that came my way, I was always, I was never fearful. That's
Hmm.
changed. I'm fearful of everything now.
Oh,
And you just change, don't you? Things
yes.
change, your priorities change in life, your outlook of life, the lens that you wear, I suppose,
Hmm.
changes when you
Hmm.
become a parent to when you were single and sort of carefree. Things are very different.
Yeah, for
And yes,
sure.
very career driven. And it took me a few years to even figure out who I was. Who am I now? So I know I'm a mum, and if I'm honest, I'm not a hugely overconfident person. But if I know I'm good at anything, I'm good at being a mum. Do I get it right all of the time? No. Do any of us? I don't think so.
No.
But but I know I'm good at that. I'm really good at being her mum, but I also want a piece of me as well. And for several years, for probably for 4 years of her life, and she's 6 now, I didn't know where I was going or what I was doing, what direction
Mm,
I wanted to go in. I was confused all of the time. I made mistakes in business by collaborating with people, thinking, okay, this is going to be where I'm going, or this is going to, I was just confused. And if I'm
mm,
honest, as much as I hate this word, I was lost,
mm.
you know?
For some time, then, how long
Oh,
did you
probably
feel
for,
that lost?
I would say for 4 years, definitely for 4 years. It's only been over the last year and a half that I've really done a lot more work on myself and really realized, okay, so I am now this different person. I still have my core values, my beliefs, but this is where I see myself now. But I also think that we self punish as well, don't we? So we
Yes.
look back at that person we were, and we still we strive to be that, instead of like just self-discovery now and self-awareness here, and sort of
Hmm.
building a bridge to gap where we want to be. We spend too much time reflecting on the past.
Right.
We're not that person anymore. Life isn't there anymore, so let's put that to bed, and okay, let's grieve that. Maybe let's, because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize for a long time it was grief, that I was actually grieving the
Mm.
person that I was, and the identity that I had, and the success that I had. And that's not taking away anything, or anybody watching. Please don't think that I don't love my child. I adore my child.
Yes.
But also, you miss that little piece of yourself. It's really difficult to move away from looking at the past and trying to find a direction moving forward.
Sure. Sure. So, at what point did you kind of realize that you were, if I can use the word suffering, that you'd been suffering?
I definitely realized, like I said, when I was probably saying she was 10 months old. So I did a lot in that first year. I put way too much pressure on
Mm.
myself. She was born in the January. We got married in Spain in the September. I turned 40 in the October. And then by the December, I had hit rock bottom. I
Mm.
had zero energy. I was underweight. I couldn't put any weight on. I was fatigued all of the time. Um,
Did you
if
know
I
at that time what it was or what was going on?
I think I questioned it several times to myself, but would try and hide from it,
Mm. Mm.
But it was probably around about the November, December that I actually admitted it, and really admitted it to sort of my mum and my husband. And that's when I said, I have to walk away from the business. I have to
Sure.
just have some time to look after myself and recuperate and be a mum. This is now the most important thing, and
Yeah.
I can't do both. I don't feel that I can do both at the moment, and this is what I wanted to
Mm.
do and where I what I need to do.
So that lost feeling lasted for, up until around 4 years old.
Yeah, yeah, it did, because I think I didn't know what direction I wanted my career to go in. I know I loved what I did. I knew that I didn't really want to put, money or time or effort into another gym, because that was a huge commitment. And, I loved being a mum, but I wanted to fit what I did around being a mum. So I made a pact with myself not to work full time until she was full time in school, because again, I loved being with her. I loved
Mhm.
doing everything with her. So I just gradually built my business back up over that time, and working part time elsewhere, just to have that space for myself. Because as much as
Mm.
I loved being with her and being a mum, I also needed to be me.
Sure.
So gradually built my business back up over that time then. And definitely I didn't feel myself, or didn't, let's call it, find myself, for about 4 years.
Hmm. Um, yeah, I mean, it's a long time when you're in it. I'm sure it feels like forever. It to trying to be getting your bearings back when prior there it sounds like you knew it was very clear what you were doing. To
Absolutely.
uh, Did you, what kind of support, you had mentioned support, and that you didn't necessarily have in the beginning anyways, the support that you needed,
Mm-hmm.
in your transition out. Did you find that support along the way?
I think what happened for me, I mean, obviously being that little bit older, both mine and Gara's parents were older. So for me, I was always determined not to, I put it this way, not to put on our parents. I'd decided to have a child, and for me, it was, I suppose, being the independent person that I am, I was going to get on with this on my own, and I didn't need any help from anybody. And I think because deep inside I knew that I was struggling, I actually made that a bigger deal than what it meant, than what it needed to be, because I
Hmm.
didn't reach out for help.
Got it.
And I know if I had reached out for help, they would have been there 100% to support me. But I hid that away, and I tried, I didn't talk. I didn't open up. I felt guilt and shame around how I felt. So I tried to struggle on my own. And I know from speaking up over the last 2 years that many women feel that way. As I said, you feel that this is such a natural thing that a woman should be doing. Why are
Mm.
you admitting that you're struggling? Why do you need help? Why can someone come and sit with her for me to have an hour's sleep? I wasn't prepared to admit that, you know?
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, for sure. So once you started, I guess, what did prompt you to start sharing and talking to people about it?
So what helped me was building my coaching business back up and gradually talking to more people. Lockdown was a big instigator because I spent a lot more time connecting with people again. I'd shut myself away so much. I just wasn't involving myself in anything. I'd gone from being this very outgoing, very social person in regards to my business and my own life. I'm a people person. I love being around people. I'm quite bubbly. I'm quite energetic. I'll do anything to help anybody, and I shut myself away.
Mm.
And if lockdown was a positive in any way, it was that started to get me communicating with people again, getting me online.
Mm.
I did a charity event with other people, and we did some workouts free to raise money for a little girl in our local area, and lots of things like that. Did a little bit of networking online, and that actually got me excited again. It got me thinking, this is what I'm missing. I've
Mm.
secluded myself from people, and I, you don't know that you're doing the damage yourself, do you? When
Sure.
I look
No.
back now, and I know that the mistakes that I made, I secluded myself. I didn't make the most of having some time off, um, some maternity leave. I didn't integrate myself into these classes. I'd take her to the class and then get straight in the car and go to work. And, all of those things. I think if I could give anybody some advice, it would be don't seclude yourself, no matter how bad you're feeling. I guarantee you that there's at least one other woman in that group that's feeling exactly the same.
Oh,
So just by,
total.
yeah, and just by going and surrounding yourself and eventually getting into those conversations would probably help. And I didn't give myself the chance to do that.
Yeah. I mean, you're also fighting against that guilt and shame and that
Yeah.
independence and wanting to keep yourself going in the same way that you had your whole life.
Yeah.
It's hard to shift gears. Um, let alone know that, it's okay to share with other
Mm-hmm.
people and that you're not going to be judged or
Mm-hmm.
shamed from the outside. I mean, we're doing that to ourselves enough with the shame. You don't want it from other people too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you just don't know really until you start saying something or you hear somebody else share. Oh,
Yeah.
maybe I'm not alone here.
Yeah, and that's what it was for me, it was getting back talking to people and not actually saying my story, but people talking
Mm,
about maybe feeling isolated
mm,
and lockdown was awful for all of us, wasn't it?
yeah.
And people saying, I feel as if I've lost a part of me. And I'd sit back and I'd think, that's exactly what's happened to me. But not necessarily because of lockdown. It's since being a mum that I've pulled myself away from everything,
Yeah.
you know? I've secluded myself. I've not put myself in situations because I think, and a lot of it was not 100% knowing what to do as a mum, being that bit older, never having been interested in children. And I was thinking, am I doing this right?
Mm.
Am I doing it wrong? Is it, all of those questions go through your head all of the time. So it's easier not to put yourself in those situations.
For sure. Gosh, I mean, it's such a transformation too. Like you said, there's still the core of yourself is there, but life changed pretty dramatically.
Yeah.
Um, And then you figured out how to reintegrate those parts of yourself that
Yes.
really are quite important to you, so you
Yes.
can be yourself as well.
Yeah. And I think, by selling the gym as much as at the time it was right, it was a double whammy then, wasn't it? I'd lost my identity even more.
Mm.
So whereas that was me, maybe if we had just ridden it out, put somebody else in to run it even, or done something slightly different, then perhaps I would have then had the energy eventually to have gone back there and
Mm.
slowly, and that was my identity. So that went as well. So
Sure.
there's two things, but again, there was that then lockdown. So, we look back, don't we? And my husband always says, actually, you keep saying it wasn't the right thing to do. But by the time we got to lockdown, we would have been in big trouble if you'd still
Oh
had the gym.
gosh,
So, you know, everything
that's right.
happens for a reason.
I guess so. Wow, that is so interesting. Oh, well, yeah, speaking of your husband, did you had mentioned that your mom noticed a shift for you? Did your husband happen to notice a shift in you, that you seemed different?
Yeah, I mean, my husband is amazing. He's a completely hands-on dad, and I've got a friend, Mark, as you know, Mark introduced us, who talks a lot about dad's mental health, and I
Yes.
think that that's a really important topic as well because luckily my husband doesn't suffer with mental health issues, but he'd be going to work after helping me through the night with fees, helping me because she'd be up, she'd be vomiting, she'd be
Mhm.
coughing, and he'd be going to work for a full day, worried sick about us being back home. Then he'd come home and then he'd take us straight off me, let me go and have an hour's sleep. And, he's just incredible. But I hid a lot from him as well. And I try and
Mhm.
put the face on when he came home because I knew how much he was worried anyway. And, of course he knew how exhausted I was. He knew that I was different. Something that really helped me and that I knew and was probably one of the only things that from my coaching that I probably took on board myself was to walk every single day.
Mm.
And back in 2018, when Quinn was born, we had the nicest weather early on in the year that we've had for a very long time in the UK. So I was really lucky that I put her in the pram in the
Mm.
morning, and we live quite close to the beach. Even though it's probably a 2 hour walk there and back, it's 5 minutes in the car, but it's all uphill. So I take her every day all the way down to the beach. I'd walk all the way back with her, and that really helped me. And I think I'm very grateful for the fact that we had the weather to do that as well. You
Oh,
know,
sure. Because if you're sort of trapped inside, or
yeah,
it's difficult to get out, there's so many barriers to doing those
yeah,
things that can help.
yeah.
What did I'm going to pause here for a second, actually. Is
Okay.
there, can I ask if you ever did get any help from the outside, or if anybody on the outside, like a provider, ever did figure out that something was going on for you?
Yeah, you can ask. That's fine.
Okay,
The
okay.
answer is no.
Okay, coming back in. So in terms of, I guess, your healing journey and figuring things out, did any provider any ever recognize that something was going on for you?
No, so as I said, in regards to the health visitors, I'd always wear a mask. I'd always pretend that everything was okay, And there's not enough information given about support. There was not something that I sought. When my husband and I realised that I was struggling, I actually paid to go back to my coach, my life and mindset coach, a gentleman from America actually, who's a very good friend of mine that I've done a lot of learning with as well, because I knew I couldn't help myself. But I felt that by reaching out to somebody privately, I wasn't going to be judged. There possibly wouldn't
Hmm.
be, because, I don't know how it works with you guys, but for us, we have what we call social services.
Hmm.
And being a mum that is not feeling great mentally, you have that fear factor that people that the government then that the professionals will think that you're not fit enough to look after your child. So there's that fear factor around it as well.
Yes.
So we talk a lot about that. I mean, I hope you don't mind me mentioning this, but I'm a champion for the Maternal Mental Health Alliance here in the UK now. And
Yes.
I didn't know anything about them. They were never mentioned to us when I'm talking about the pre-birth classes that we go to, why is their name not mentioned?
Sure.
Why are we not told that, okay, look, there is actually help if for some reason you don't feel good, which some people don't, if you don't get enough sleep, if you feel that you don't feel yourself, here's the details for the Maternal Mental Health Alliance and they can help you. I didn't know anything about them. It's only a year and a half ago that I found out anything about them. My daughter was, 4. So I'm a champion now with them because I'm so passionate about mums knowing and being made aware of the support that is out there, because the work that they do is fantastic, but it's not spoken about enough. So, I didn't have enough help, unfortunately, but we did pray privately for me to seek that help myself.
Sure. I mean, some support is great, but having somebody that you're connected to who knows you is fantastic. So what can you talk a little bit about what the Maternal Mental Health Alliance does and what you do with them?
So the Maternal Mental Health Alliance are primarily an organisation that set up to support new parents, so mums and dads, struggling, that not feeling themselves, any maternal mental health issues. They do a lot of research. They actually put a lot of programs out, and from my point of view, I speak about my own personal journey, and I sit in on forums and any programs or any research that they're doing. I sit in on forums, give my advice, I give my part of my story, and just help them gain information as to how they can improve the awareness around maternal mental health and the support that's given to new parents in the UK.
Mm-hmm. And I know that you've done some really big awareness stuff in the UK. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so as a champion, I was asked by the Prince and Princess of Wales, so Kensington Palace. They did a whole theme around maternal mental health, and they chose 2 of us champions to do a video for them that appeared on all of their socials. And yeah, just trying to do as much as we can within the UK to build awareness around this subject, because there hasn't been enough up until now. And for me personally, I think within businesses, I mean, I know I had a problem returning back to my business. And for self-employed people, it's something that's really difficult to target.
Yeah.
But what we can target is other businesses and within the workplace. I mean, menopause is now a huge topic here. Okay, so
Yes.
menopause within the workplace, creating awareness, workshops, etc., is massive here, as it is all around the world, I'm sure. But maternal mental health isn't. And surely, rather than going into work, whether you're a new mum or even the new dad, going into work, that all you're asked is, oh, can I see a picture of the baby? How's the baby? Not, how are you?
Right.
How are you? Have you slept? Have you eaten? Are you okay? Do you need any further support? They're just expected to go back to work from what is the best time of their lives and everything be perfect. And unfortunately, for many people, that's not the case.
No. No. What has the, I guess, reception been to these campaigns and you speaking out? What kind of feedback are you getting?
Fantastic. It is really fantastic, and there's so much work being done now to build that awareness, that hopefully everything that the research that specifically the Maternal Mental Health Alliance are doing, then hopefully over the next few years, I think that it would be a much more spoken about topic. I think there'll be a lot more awareness. I think that there'll be less stigma around the topic, because at the moment there is such a huge stigma around it, and talking about both parents, because like I said, talking about the dads is really important too. We live in a generation now where most dads are hands-on. Not every dad I know, but most dads are very hands-on.
Right.
So they need to be supported as well, don't they?
Yes, absolutely they do. So are you seeing, I mean, you talked about the programs and whatnot, but are you seeing more of the awareness leading to a bigger impact, like more people seeking support or understanding what's going on?
There's definitely more people seeking support. That, like I said, the sort of huge stigma that was around this topic seems to be dropping. There is much more open conversations going on, and you can see that even from social media. So as I suppose I don't like this word, but as negative social media can be in certain ways, it can also be very positive. And I think this is one way that it is very positive, because just creating that safe environment, creating that space where people think, well, actually, I'm not alone,
Mm-hmm.
because that is the worst feeling in the world. And that's how I felt.
It
I felt
is.
like I was alone and I couldn't admit to how I was feeling. So there's definitely, definitely more support available. And I think definitely that removing the stigma from this topic is huge, and I think that is definitely happening at the moment.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, it's so, sorry. It's so great that you're able to be a part of this. I mean, just thinking of like sort of like that, the kind of arc of your story, if you will, that of from this massive life change and grief and depression to being able to heal through that and now advocate and support other people. I mean, um, it's like such an amazing purpose to your, I guess, suffering, if you will, that you're able to, I guess, put it put it to use for other people.
Absolutely. And, for me, I do what I do to help others. I've always been passionate from the day I opened my gym doors, that was to help other people. I opened a ladies only gym because of something else that had, happened in my life where I thought, if I feel intimidated and uncomfortable to go to a mixed gym, I'm sure other women do too. And from that time, I have been so passionate about helping other people and speaking your own truth from your own lived experience. I think there's no better way to touch other people than doing that. I think you can have all the expertise in the world, but if you haven't experienced something yourself, then there's a big difference, isn't there? There's power behind
Yes.
your own story.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's like there's a depth of knowing, not just cognitively knowing, but knowing in your
Yes.
body what something feels like, and having
Yeah.
survived through it for sure. It makes you a really powerful advocate. I mean, it takes all of us, even for people who haven't had the personal experience. It takes all of us raising our voices, but there's something that I know you can probably feel it when you're talking to somebody who's been through it. It's just a connection that you can't make in any other way. Just a
Definitely.
knowing. Yep.
And when I speak to people, I say, strange as this may sound, I didn't know what to wear. I didn't, I got to a point where I'd had such lack of self-awareness. I didn't know what to wear. I didn't know what suited me anymore. I didn't know how I wanted my hair. I didn't, and I speak to women and I coach women now that feel that way. And I feel that with them because I know I've been there. And they
Absolutely.
say, I don't think I'm ever, I'm not going to be myself ever again. And I'm saying, like, well, perhaps you won't be that person again, but you can find a new version of yourself. Let's figure out what you do like to wear, what does suit you, where are you going? But when you're in that situation, all of those things change. And it
Mhm.
does sound, I can remember saying to my husband, and I'd buy clothes that were
Mhm.
totally not me at all. And I can remember him going, I'd say, does this look nice? And he'd go, yeah, it's not your usual thing. But it does look nice. And I'd say, it doesn't look nice, does it? And I
Oh,
knew in my own head that it didn't look nice. And I knew that it wasn't really what I wanted to wear. But again, I was trying to fit in to this mum persona, into this mum. But why? Why? Why can I not carry on wearing the things I'd always been used to wearing? But you're
right.
so confused and you're so out of routine and out of your own self that
Hmm.
even the clothes you wear is
Right.
confusing.
Absolutely. And yeah, people who have been through it know what you're talking about for
Yeah.
sure. Well, I really appreciate you sharing your story and all of the work that you're doing. It's so important, the impact that you're having. Maybe you don't get feedback all of the time about how you sharing has impacted somebody else, and that's the thing about advocacy type of work. You don't always know where it lands, but I mean, you're part of something that's changing the culture around this. So I appreciate you sharing here and all of the work that you're doing.
Thank you, and I appreciate you having me here. It's really important. As I said to you, I feel so passionate about helping others, and if it only helps one person listening to this podcast or reading my article in the newspaper, then that's all that matters. Is not somebody not feeling alone and somebody not feeling the way that I felt, opening up and being able to see that there is a way out of how you feel at the moment.
Absolutely. Well said. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
For those who'd like to get connected with Emma, you can find her at emmajlifeshaper.com and also on LinkedIn and Instagram at emmajlifeshaper. And for those of you in the UK who want the kind of support that Emma was talking about, you can go to maternalmentalhealthalliance.org to get connected to support resources in the UK. And if you're new to the Mom and Mind podcast or you haven't yet, come and follow me on Instagram at Mom and Mind. You can also go to my website, wellmindperinatal.com, where you can find all links to my social media accounts, podcast episodes, links to podcast platforms, and of course, all of my online courses. Thank you so much for being with us. Until next time.